What up, friends? I'm James, your host, and today's going to be a bit of a different video. I've wanted to do this for a little while now, but in my usual fashion, it's a bit late. But I wanted to basically go over what albums I picked up in the first half of 2026. You know, I like a lot of different kinds of music. I am a physical guy, as you can tell from the video games over there. But I am a really big collector of CDs specifically. You know, back when I was a teenager, that is basically all I could afford, and that was kind of the sort of format of choice that I ended up going with, especially due to the compact nature of them. I was able to buy a lot of them and store a lot of them. So this video is going to be basically me going over everything that I picked up so far, and I'm gonna do it in a mostly alphabetical order, so hopefully it's pretty easy to follow. So let's get into the first one. So a lot of the albums that you're going to see on this video are actually ones that I reviewed or I'm going to review later this year. And the first one that I ended up picking up here was Nessa Barrett's new EP. This one, again, as I said in the review, I really liked it. It was a much more like kind of noir-ish sound compared to what she went for with her actual album that she released before. And I thought this was a pretty cool sound for it. It's a really cool packaging. I love the aesthetic and color choice of the black and white with the image of the cat on there. I think it's really cool. Next up, I picked up Madison Beer's album as well. We have the standard edition here, and then I also have the alternate cover as well. Overall, I like the actual album cover for this one. I said this in the video as well, but like it's a little too like tour postery for me. I kind of wish there was some text on it or something. I do think the alternate cover is actually probably a little bit better as an album cover, to be honest, but the whole packaging is pretty nice. I like the more like floral sort of arrangement on the inside. If you can kind of see that it's white on white from the light is not helping, but you know. Another one I ended up picking up was the Black Keys Peaches, which we'll be getting to eventually. And one thing that I really like about this one too, you know, the cover is kind of whatever. I don't really like how it's designed. I know I think it's a pretty famous photo that they used, but design-wise, it's not really for me. But the actual plastic wrap came with a little peach scratch and sniff sticker right there, which I ended up wanting to keep because I thought that was kind of cute and kind of cool. And I feel like that's a very like retro thing to do, which is pretty fitting for the Black Keys, to be honest. But yeah, it's an okay packaging just because it's a little gimmicky like that, but not really my favorite. And I'm also like not always the biggest fan of the gatefold covers here, but it's okay. Of course, I also ended up picking up James Blake's new album as well. Again, like I said in the video, this one is a great album cover. I love the color scheme here. I love the image that he chose with him kind of playing the cymbals. It gives very like Demon Days era Gorillaz live performances, if you guys remember that one. That was like back when they didn't really show Damon or the rest of the band. It was just everybody covered in shadow behind like screens and shit. So that was pretty cool, and that's kind of what this one reminds me of a bit, but it's a pretty cool package. Now we have Bridget Calls Me Baby's new album. This one, again, you know, it's a pretty good album cover. It definitely does capture the sort of like time frame that I think they were trying to pull from here, even down to the kind of weird typography that they have their name on in the corner there. It's very Depeche Mode. But inside the gatefold, it's not too interesting, just solid blue, to be honest. Back cover's pretty cool, but it's not really the most interesting package out there, but it works for what it is. This one, though, I picked up Burial's first album. I got into Burial this year, actually. I really started getting way more into house music and just like electronic music in general this year. I was already a fan of it for a few years now, but this year especially, I feel like this is my house era, to be honest. But this is a fantastic album. You know, untrue, probably the better album, but it's still really cool. I really like the cover. It kind of gives like ISIS Panopticon a little bit. But I think it definitely fits the sound of the record. It's such a moody album. You know, the inside is just kind of your usual, not very interesting, old school silver CD fare. But I think the cover itself is really cool. And of course, the album's fantastic too. So next up, I also picked up My Ghost Go Ghost by Bystorm. You know, as I said in my review, this one wasn't exactly my thing. I still liked it overall, but it definitely isn't really what I kind of like from the Injury Reserve guys. It's definitely a pretty downcast album, especially due to the fact that, they're still kind of dealing with Groggs' passing and stuff like that. And I think the album artwork is pretty cool. It has that sort of like moody and esoteric vibe to it that I think fits the stuff on the record. It's not my favorite cover. I just don't really get it, to be honest, or like how it really relates to the record itself. But it's fine, and I wanted to support the guys too, especially with all the shit that they're going through right now. So I figured I'd pick this one up too. I also ended up picking up Cannon's new album as well. Very 80s. It has that sort of like dreamy synth pop and sort of like almost new wavy style with the sort of rainbow color scheme that we got going on here. It's pretty interesting packaging. They really lean into that sort of rainbow color scheme, which I do appreciate. The actual cover itself is maybe a little campy for me, to be honest. But we always love some camp sometimes. But I do think this is a pretty good album packaging overall. I also ended up picking up 2 albums from the Cardigans as well. I picked up this one here. We got Gran Turismo. One of their more lesser known albums, I feel like, compared to this one, First Band on the Moon by the Cardigans as well. It's kind of a faded cover. It's probably a bit hard to see on the camera there, but this album is fantastic. Like, this is this is probably one of the horniest 90s rock albums I've seen in a minute. It's very fun. It's very like just earnest, and I think it's very catchy as well. So I love the Cardigans. They're such, I feel like they're kind of like a one-hit wonder in a way, where people mostly only know either like Love Fool or one Step on Me, and like those are great tracks, but this whole album is fantastic, and I would definitely recommend it. This year, I also started to get more into country as well. Country is definitely a bit of a blind spot for me. I don't like too many country artists. It's not really a sound that really gels with me all that much, but I did end up picking up some of Tyler Childers' albums. We got this one here that's very good. This one as well. And his newest record that he put out maybe like a year or 2 ago too. Like, I really like these albums a lot, to be honest. He definitely has more of like a southern rock sound to him as well, which is probably why I like them compared to a lot of other country albums. I find that like it has an edge that I think is missing in a lot of country albums, to be honest. But yeah, very cool packaging. Again, they are the gatefolds, but I mean, like, it's pretty good art in here too from his newest one there. And we have this one here from this one. And for Purgatory, we have this kind of cool, spacey image right here in the middle of nature. Like, he definitely has a very sort of honest vibe to him that I think really comes out through his music. And I like how he kind of tackles different things in his country music as well. It's not the usual tropes. He kind of approaches them in a different way, which I think is cool. Now, this one I am very happy to own. It is Tiffany Day's new album. This one is really cool, and it's kind of a trend that I'm seeing a lot with a lot of younger artists these days, younger Gen Z artists, and just like sometimes in the sleaze revival scene that's going on as well, where like there is no cover. It's just a clear jewel case, but the image is on the disc, which is pretty cool, to be honest. I think it's a very cool cover, and I think it's a very cool idea for packaging too. The back is just kind of your standard trackless fare. I don't think you can see it with the light, but I think the cover is very cool. I love the sort of cutout look where you can see the silver of the CD and things like that. It's a very unique packaging. Now, to add on to the sort of housey vibes, I also picked up Delight's 2 albums. I'm missing their second album, I think, but I have this one here. We got World Click and Dewdrops in the Garden. This album is fantastic. It's like house music, but with like a psychedelic twist to it. I think it's really interesting, and it's definitely of the time. It definitely is very 90s, that's for sure. But I think it's really fun. It's really smooth too. If you like that sort of like smooth, housey, psychedelic vibe inside of the packaging, you can kind of tell what this album's about for sure. But they were definitely on a trip, and you will be on a trip when you listen to this. It's very good. I've also been picking up a lot of Depeche Mode's older albums. Speaking of Depeche Mode, from the Bridget Calls Me Baby thing, where I picked up Playing the Angel as well. You know, I have a local record store near me, a book off actually, where they actually have some pretty good stuff, and I found this one there too. This one also pretty interesting interior packaging as well. I always like Depeche Mode's packaging. It's very unique. That sort of like new wave era of Depeche Mode, New Order, stuff like that, I think has some of the best album packaging we've ever seen, especially when you get like people like Peter Seville doing the covers. Like, come on, that shit's peak. But yeah, this album cover is pretty interesting too. I think this was one of their later albums. There were, early 2000s albums, but yeah, also pretty cool. This one I just randomly got in is from work as well. It's Earl Sweatshirt and the Alchemist Project from a little while back. But this one is also pretty cool. I like how hand-drawn it is as well. I think this kind of album cover really fits the gatefold cardboard sleeve design. I think it has that sort of like cool effect that it adds to the actual artwork and drawing as well, where it kind of has that more organic feel to it. But yeah, this one's also a pretty cool design as well. Another find that I found at that book off was EPMD's album here, Business Never Personal. Now, I got into EPMD because A$AP Rock is one of my favorite rappers, and, you know, he grew up in the New York scene, and he listed EPMD as one of his biggest inspirations, so I ended up checking them out myself, and they're really good, turns out. Turns out good artists influence good artists. But yeah, they're really cool. It's definitely, like, all business compared, speaking of the album cover, compared to, like, a lot of, like, 90s hip-hop, I think. You know, a lot of 90s hip-hop ended up doing a lot of those, like, skits and a lot of, like, in-jokes and things like that, which is fun, but, like, this album is just straight-up fucking rapping. Like, they didn't come to play. They just came to fucking rap. And it's a very good album, too. I really like it a lot. Can't hear nothing but the music on this one is fantastic, and if there's one song you should check out from this one, it's that. I also picked up a few Everything But the Girl albums as well. We got this one here, Language of Life, and then Temperamental, which is honestly probably their best album, I think. This one is just fantastic. The whole vibe of this album is just perfect, I think. There's maybe a few lull moments on it or something like that, but, you know, from the opening track, 5 Fathoms, like, this is a mood. If you want some moody, like, driving music, this is a perfect album. I still think this is probably their best. Another one that I'm very happy to get, kind of like the Tiffany Day one, where I feel like it was a little bit harder to get for a little while, is the new Fuckers album. This one is really cool. As I said in the review, I think the album cover is really sick, and as I also mentioned, it has like a glossy sort of like embossed sheen to it, which I think is really interesting compared to the solid white of the digital album cover. But this one's also pretty cool. It's very like indie-ish. Definitely has their own sort of attitude to it, which I think perfectly fits the music, to be honest. But yeah, I'm very happy I have this, because this was a little hard for me to get, to be honest. And then with the new Format album that came out this year that I ended up reviewing, I ended up going back and picking up some of their older albums. You know, I have their first one right here. This album is actually really fucking good, to be honest. The first single, the first track on this thing is fantastic, and I think is like I don't know if this was popular when it came out or not, because I wasn't really super into music when this album came out, to be honest, but I think it's great. And the album cover is also very interesting, too. The sort of faceless drawing right there. The very, like, bold colors, too, which I appreciate. And it kind of extends inside as well with the light blue there. And then we also have their second album here. Where is it? Yeah, here it is. Dog Problems. This one's really cool because it's kind of like die cut. So you can kind of, like, go through each layer of the dogs right here, if it shows up on camera. Hopefully it does. But going through each layer kind of gives different album credits, which I think is really cool. But yeah, very interesting one there. And then, of course, we have the newest one, which is interesting because this one is in a thinner single, as you can see there. It's usually, this type of CD case is usually used for singles, but they put their full album on this one. It kind of has like a little obi if you actually pick up Japanese CDs and stuff like that. It has one of those right there, which is really interesting as well. But it's a fun package. It's kind of fun to do that like as a one-off or something. I also picked up a Bibi Gilberto album as well, Tanto Tempo. She's a very good like Latin artist, very upbeat, very fun, but also knows when to like kind of make it moody as well. This one is very of the time, a bunch of album credits, some photos and stuff in there as well. But I think it's a pretty cool album cover overall with just the sort of kind of bolded shadows of her face. That's also very of the time, though. It is a bit dated, to be honest, but, I think it works for what it is, even though I don't think it really conveys what her sound usually is, to be honest, but she's a good artist, too. And then, of course, I had to pick up Gorillaz' new album, The Mountain, as well. It also has a little, like, strip thing here that you can remove or kind of like move around like that, which is really interesting. And then I also picked up the deluxe version as well that comes with a few more photos and some extra tracks and things like that. I really like these sort of like hardcover, like book kind of like gatefold CD packages. I think these are really cool. I think they're really fitting for like special editions and deluxe editions and stuff like that. And, Jamie Hewlett's art, you always got to have more of it, right? And, it's kind of funny because Gorillaz was one of the first CDs I ever bought. I bought Plastic Beach and The Fall, I think, because it was kind of around when that album came out, The Fall. It was like 2012, 2013, which is when I really started getting into music, to be honest. So it's kind of cool to kind of the Gorillaz keeps coming, even when it was one of my first albums I ever picked up on CD. So that's pretty interesting. I also picked up Ariana Grande's new album as well. I wanted to support her too. I don't know if she really needs the financial support, but, with everything that she's going through right now, I just hope for the best for her, and I want to support her in any way I can, to be honest. Because, for me, I've been following Ariana Grande since her fucking Victorious days, dude, if that dates me at all. So, I've been following her for a long time, and I really hope that she gets better and, she has a good support system and all that. But, as an album package as well, I think it is very, very good, very moody. I really like the photo that they chose for her, to be honest. I think it's a very sort of like vulnerable image that they use, which is nice, especially for the back too. And this little part right here that has a track listing was actually a sticker on the plastic wrap, which I wanted to keep. So I just put it on the back here because it doesn't normally have the track listing. So that's kind of interesting too. Now, this album is a crazy-ass find. At that book off that I found a lot of these other CDs, I got a copy of Lowe's first album, which was crazy to me. I got this for like 3 times less than what it's been going for on Discogs. It's going for like $90 on Discogs. I got this shit for $30, dude. And, this is a great album. It is very sort of slow core, very moody. But, it's a great listen, and I think this sort of album packaging is always very cool. With these classic ones, they always have like the little black strip right there, which I'm not like super into. I like when they put designs there, but it's very of the time, which I think it's kind of an interesting little time capsule. And for the time that this was released in '94, they actually did do a colored disc, which I thought was cool too. But just the fact that I got this for such a great price made me very happy. We also have Bruno Mars's new album too. This one, like I said in the review, it's very Silk Sonic. It kind of feels, like the album itself, it kind of feels like Silk Sonic leftovers. And they did do a little bit with the CD, kind of with the rose motif and stuff like that, gave it some color. But yeah, it's an okay album. And the packaging is okay too. I also have Miss Grit's new album. This is actually one that I picked up because of the album cover. I thought it looked interesting, so I ended up checking it out. And it's a pretty good record, to be honest. It's actually going to come out in my next review session. But yeah, it's a pretty interesting packaging. Very bold cover choice. I think the image is very cool. It definitely fits the sort of like moody electronic sound that this album has, to be honest. Inside isn't super interesting. The back kind of is like a back view of her with the track listing where her head would be, which is kind of cool. Gatefolds again, not my favorite. Sometimes I feel like they just don't do anything interesting with the middle, and that's the case here, but it's pretty cool overall. I also got the new Mitski album, and this one's interesting because the iTunes cover of this actually, it just zooms in on the cat's face, and it doesn't have the rest of the image, which is, again, one of the perks of physical is you get the actual full image of the artwork, which is very nice. The inside is also kind of cool, kind of quaint, has the sort of like cursive writing and stuff like that. And the back kind of completes the image too, so you can get the full image there, which I think is always very cool when they do that. When it's like one long continuous album art, I think that's really sick. And that's one of the advantages of the gatefold cover, actually. So that's something that you should do if you ever use a gatefold cover. And then I also picked up Model Actrice's latest record that they put out maybe like a year or two ago. This is a very cool band, very like dance punk. It has like a sort of dark edge to it, but it's still pretty catchy too. Pretty experimental sometimes as well if you want something pretty unique and weird. The inside is also pretty cool as well. Very avant-garde, very abstract as well. But I think the album cover is just very bold. You know, that sort of like gate with like the purple sort of hue to it. It's very interesting, and I'm glad I picked this one up. It also has like a kind of an interesting texture too. Next up, we have Muse's newest album. This one's also pretty interesting. You know, Muse has always had their sort of like space theme going on. It's definitely something that we're used to by this point, but I think it's pretty cool how like sci-fi they went this time around, like with this image as well, even with like the back right here. It's almost like a bit 90s in how like the sci-fi is portrayed as kind of that sort of like almost retro futurist sci-fi aesthetic. Looks like on the cover they're either going to Europa or Pluto up there, but yeah, I thought the image choice was very cool here, and it's kind of an interesting contrast compared to like Simulation Theory that went for that sort of like 80s neon cyberpunky sci-fi aesthetic. This one is much more moody and a bit more, maybe not somber, but serious, I suppose, because Simulation Theory was I actually like that album, but that album was definitely very cheeky and very unserious. So I also ended up picking up the newest Nia Archives album too. Nia Archives had a very good first album, and I haven't listened to this one yet, but it will be part of my reviews at some point. And this one's also pretty cool. You know, it has all the track lyrics and stuff there as well. Nia Archives' first album also had a pretty cool album cover. I like the very bold image of her face, and this one's just continuing the sort of boldness as well. And I really like what they did with the font here, with the different weights on the two words right there. I thought that was really interesting, and that's something that me, as a graphic designer, really enjoys. I also had to pick up the classic Paramore, All We Know Is Falling. This album, you know, I've gotten a lot of Paramore's newer albums, but some of their old ones have still eluded me somehow. I think I'm only missing one at this point, but, you know, this is such a classic. Like, back when I first got into Paramore, Emergency was, like, my big thing. You know, I think that was probably my favorite song back then. It's probably still one of my favorite songs by them, to be honest, but it's such a classic, very nostalgic. You know, the inside also very nostalgic too, has that sort of like blue and white twinkling vibe and aesthetic to it. And if you need more nostalgia, like, look at them. Like, come on. But yeah, it's a great album, and I'm glad I own this one, because I feel like this one is maybe a bit harder to find compared to some of their other ones somehow. And speaking of my country faves, I also picked up Orville Peck's Pony. I really like Orville Peck. His second album that went a bit more like standard country is definitely really good. But this one in particular, I think, is just very unique in terms of country music in the whole scene in general. It almost feels more of like a shoegaze album at times. It's very moody. It's very like sparse and echoey. And I really like the sort of like vibe that he ended up creating with this album. It's very somber. It feels like either like the end of a Western movie, or like when the Western hero is like down on his luck and he's like walking through this small town that like everybody hates him or nobody knows him or something like that. It's very cool. And if you were to listen to any Orville Peck album, I would honestly recommend this one just for how unique it is. I also picked up Pink Pantheress' Fancy Some More, the sort of like remix album of Fancy That songs and stuff like that. Kind of cool typography on the middle here and also on the back. You know, I love Pink Pantheress, probably one of my favorite newer artists right now, and I love that their bouquet on the cover is drawn in and she's not actually holding anything. But she has some very good covers too. Fancy That had a great album cover, and this one's also very bold, very cute. But yeah, this one's a pretty good packaging overall, I think. We also have Poppy's Empty Hands. This album cover is alright. It's not really my favorite or anything. It kind of fits the stuff that's on here, as I said in the comments of that review, because I forgot to put it in. But I like what she does with the sort of imagery here, the distortion, things like that, and the bold colors that she has on the back here. A very blue album, but it's a pleasant blue, and I like the sort of like consistency of the color scheme on this one. I also picked up Radiohead's Pablo Honey because I randomly got this in at work. And this is obviously their first album, and one that I kind of found was a little bit tougher to get compared to a lot of their other albums. I feel like just because this one, other than Creep, is kind of like a more of an underdog album from them, maybe it doesn't get printed as much, I don't know. But I like it. Very cool. Very orange and purple. But yeah, it's just kind of cool to own and see like the sort of graphic design ideologies that they had in the 90s. They were very big on the sort of like listing, very technological listing stuff here with that, very label heavy and things, which is pretty interesting. Almost has that sort of like Gen X soft club vibe to it a little bit. Same with that Neon Archives album too, actually. But I think this one's a pretty cool packaging overall, even if it is very dated. I also picked up this Rez album that showed up on one of my playlists as a recommended, and it was actually pretty good. This one is a pretty cool album cover too, actually. It's pretty bold for the early 2000s, to be honest. It feels very timeless, which I think is really interesting. I love the typography. I like the black and white photo mixed with the red text. I think that's really cool. Even the inside is also pretty interesting too. But if you like that sort of like R&B, hip hop, kind of like Lauryn Hill a little bit, this is definitely one to check out. I think it's pretty underrated. I also ended up picking up Olivia Rodrigo's newest album as well, which we will get to in a future review. This album cover is great, to be honest. I love what she did with this one. The packaging isn't as consistent as I would like. You know, we have this sort of like flower motif right there and on the back as well. I kind of wish she more honed in on just this sort of like sky, sort of like dreamy aesthetic, if you will. But I think the album cover is great and it's a fun package overall. And speaking of Olivia Rodrigo, I also randomly got this in at work as well, the sort of composition notebook special anniversary edition of Sour, which I think is pretty interesting. One of the cool things about this one is not only is it like used as a notebook, but it also has a bunch of like behind the scenes photos. She also like talks a lot about like her thought processes on like when she was writing these songs that are on Sour and kind of like what inspired them and things like that, which is pretty cool, especially if you're a big fan of her and want to kind of get to know more about like the behind the scenes of her creative process. So I thought that was pretty cool. Next up, we have a sort of greatest hits of the Ronettes right here. One of the few very like classic artists slash groups that I really enjoy. Because back then they weren't really doing a lot of like full albums and stuff like that. I'd never usually buy greatest hits, but I opted to buy this one because it has most of the songs that they released on here. I think there's like there's a few other songs that are only on a different greatest hits, which I'll probably pick up. But yeah, again, I don't normally buy greatest hits because I think they're redundant if you have all the albums. But I think overall with these older artists, this is the way to go, especially if you're picking up CD, because like you can buy singles and stuff on vinyl, but for CD, for those older artists, pretty tough to come by. So I figured this one was fitting. I also picked up the new Steven Sanchez album here. This one also kind of continues that sort of like retro aesthetic that he was doing on his first album too. It has that sort of like 70s like jazz album cover vibe to it. I think it's pretty interesting. I like the sort of like use of color on the disc here and on the back as well. The album, I haven't gotten to it yet in my reviews, but it's very funny. It kind of feels like an oldies version of Big Time Rush. Whether that's for you or not is your prerogative, but as an album cover, I think it's pretty fun, even though I do like his first one better. I also picked up the new Shinedown album as well. This one's pretty cool just because of how like bold the image and color use is here. It almost has this sort of like collage-y, like newspaper print effect, which I think is pretty cool. The inside of the package also continues it, which is very nice, very consistent. And I think the text and typography on the back is also very nice too. Very clean album cover from them. You know, some of their early albums were a little when it comes to album covers, but ever since The Sound of Madness, I feel like they really had some good album covers. This one I was very excited to pick up as well, the new Slater album. Now, I got into them this year as well, too, or her this year as well, and this is such a fantastic album, dude. When we get to the review of this one, you're going to see the praises that I have to sing about this one. But I think the album cover is so cool. I love the sort of dollar sign effect that she always uses and how bold it is on the cover. And I was lucky enough to get the red CD version. I just stumbled across it in a Barnes & Noble, and it turns out this one is like a desired one. I don't know if it's only like a limited print or something like that, or if it's like random which one you get, but I was very happy to learn that I got a cool special red CD, which like you never see this part of the CD change color, you know. But I think the album packaging for this one is fantastic, and it's a lot of fun. I also picked up a few albums from Sleigh Bells, too. You know, they're one of those artists that are always kind of like all over the place. They're always doing something different. Each album kind of goes for a different vibe. This one is very like of the time, 2010s, kind of has that like indie aesthetic to it. And then same with this one, but in like kind of a different way, to be honest. This is a really pretty interesting album, to be honest. It's like not what you would expect from the album cover. We'll leave it at that. We'll leave a little surprise for you if you want to check it out. But it's a very fun cover. This part is just strange, but I actually do really like the cover itself. I think it's really cool, really bold. And you know me, because I listen to one artist, I have to pick up all their albums. So of course we bought the new Strokes album as well. Haven't heard the greatest things about it, unfortunately, so we'll see when I get around to it. But one thing I think is really interesting with this one, too, is not only did they kind of make it in the style of the classic albums and CDs and stuff with the black spine right there, but they also, in the booklet here, the Strokes part here is a clear overlay that goes in front of the booklet, which is kind of interesting how they did that, because normally I feel like they would put a sticker on the actual jewel case itself, or they would just like make it kind of just on the booklet. But I think it's really interesting that they used a sleeve cover, like a clear sleeve cover there, so you can take it out if you don't want to see the Strokes logo on the album cover. The album cover itself is kind of, The image is cool. The text is kind of just there, to be honest. It's not really designed all that much, but it's a fairly interesting packaging overall. I also got the new Harry Styles album, too. You know, as you saw in my review, the album cover on this one is pretty interesting, pretty bold, but I don't like what they did with the text here. I feel like it works just a lot better with the image and the black on the side. The inside is also very interesting, too. I don't know what the hell that has to do with the album cover, or really the album itself, to be honest. But, you know, I appreciate the weirdness, at least. We're getting down to it, and to continue on with the pickups that I picked up this time around, we have Suicide Boys' albums as well. These ones are pretty interesting in just how consistently they are just this single little sleeve here, and there's nothing else to them. There's no real insert to them. You know, they have like designs on the disc and things like that, which is nice, but they're always in these little like single sleeves, which I think is very unique for them, at least. It makes it kind of hard to store because they're so small and thin and they don't have anything on the spines, you know. But it definitely is pretty unique, and I like at least how they're all consistent. You know, at least we're not having like one or two that are like in a jewel case or something. They're all like this, which I appreciate the consistency at least. It looks nicer on the shelf because of it. I also ended up getting the final two Talk Talk albums that I needed. You know, I'm a pretty big fan of some of their later work as well. I need to kind of do a deeper dive on some of their early like pop stuff, you know, but I'm sure I'll like it too, just because I like synth pop and things like that. But I really like their later packaging. Like, I love the simplicity of Spirit of Eden and Laughing Stock and things like that. I think it's just really interesting. This one is kind of there as well. I don't really like how there's a gray border around it. I feel like they should just use this image as the entire thing, but, you know, whatever. I wasn't there in the 80s when they designed this, so who am I to judge? I also picked up the Tank and the Banga's newest album as well. They've always had some pretty interesting packaging too. They had an album, I think it was the Green Balloon, that came out a few years ago. That I thought had a pretty unique cover, and this one's also kind of continuing. They always have like a balloon motif, apparently. But yeah, the packaging is pretty interesting. I like the color scheme. I like the use of the reflective ball and stuff like that. Overall, pretty simple, but pretty effective. And this one was interesting. So I picked up the Tattoo album because it had like a re-release recently this year where I think they're printing. It might have been just this one, or might have been a few other albums as well, but I got into them because of that re-release, just because I thought the cover looked cool. It is definitely very 2000s. It's very sort of like, it almost feels like a new metal album cover, even though it's not. It's Russian pop, but I thought the album packaging was pretty interesting. I like the sort of green overtones to everything. I thought that was a pretty interesting aesthetic, especially with the red text that they chose here. But yeah, I always kind of have like a soft spot for this era of album packaging. It's just so delightfully strange. I also ended up picking up this sort of like deluxe version of Underscores' Wall Socket too. It has a few extra songs, a few extra sort of like, I think, remixes and stuff like that. And I think it's just a few extra bonus tracks, actually, now that I'm looking at it. But I like the interior art as well. I always like how artists sometimes do like the sort of like hand-drawn look to their albums and stuff like that. I think it has like an authenticity that I think is really interesting, especially with this one. I don't know if she drew this or if she had an artist do it, but it's pretty endearing. And I like how more organic it feels, especially compared to the normal cover of Wall Socket, which is more like photography based, So it's a kind of interesting contrast there. And then, speaking of Underscores, we also have her new album here. And this one also kind of continues what I said about that one. I like how hand-drawn it is. I like the boldness. I like how it's mostly white with some splashes of color here and there as well. I thought that was pretty interesting. And she also put a photo card in the album, which I thought was pretty cute. And if you don't get it physically, you won't get your Underscores photo card. So, a win for me. Of course, you know me, big into house and stuff like that. I picked up some of Underworld's albums as well. Underworld, honestly, probably one of my favorite house artists overall, or just electronic artists in general, really. I just think their stuff there's so much variety, but it's also so fun and like weirdly consistent at times as well. The album packagings are also really sick too. Like this one is just like very different for them, with like actually having a person on the cover, which is not really what they normally do. It's mostly like this with this sort of like weird art piece on the cover, which is pretty interesting as well, especially in the interior part right there too. But Underworld, if you need a good electronic artist to get into, Underworld is your group. They also have a sort of like stream of consciousness lyrical style that I think is really fun and interesting. So I also ended up picking up the Vows album that came out maybe like a year or two ago as well. Vows are a sort of like, I got into them because they opened for Poppy when I saw Poppy on tour. They have this sort of like death pop vibe to them where it's just like very noisy and fuzzy pop music, but it's like, it's dark but catchy at the same time. You can kind of probably grasp that from their packaging design as well. It has that sort of like darkness, sort of edge collaginess to it. But it also definitely does feel a little more like, maybe not fun, but it does feel like they know kind of what they're about, and they're creating a interesting little dichotomy between the darker aspects of their music and the catchy, fuzzy pop stuff. So I like their packaging a lot, to be honest. I also ended up picking up some Wolf Parade albums too. A pretty underrated sort of like indie rock band. They were. I feel like a lot of those like 2000s era indie rock bands all kind of have a similar feel to them, and that's definitely true for them too. But I think Expo 86 is also pretty interesting because this is when they started to get a little more like synth poppy too, which was pretty interesting. Definitely a little different from their earlier work, that's for sure. But I really like this album cover as well for their first album here. It's probably not going to be able to see very well. Maybe I can tilt it here so you can see the design. But very simple, very clean. But I think it works really well, to be honest. Very artsy. And finally, for my normal CDs, I also picked up Young the Giant's new album as well. Everything that you see here that's new that I haven't gotten to, I will get to. I swear to you. I will get it to by the end of this year. But this one's a pretty interesting album cover as well. It definitely has that sort of like indie vibe to it. It almost feels a bit like nostalgic. Weirdly, I for some reason this gives me like 2016 Stomp Clap Hey vibes. I don't know if that's a good thing or not, but I think it's a very fun package, and it has a very like carefree, whimsical nature to it, which I can always get behind. So. Now then, I said that we got done with the normal albums because I separated my K-pop albums that I got. So, of course, first I got aespa's Lemonade. So this one was just the single that came out. And normally with K-pop albums, there's so many different versions. I am unfortunately a sucker and I buy most of the versions. But on groups that have like multiple like member versions, I usually only pick up my favorite members version because that's too much to buy, too much to store, and it gets a little crazy when you get a group with like 8 members and they each have their own version, you know. So I end up only picking my favorite. Of course, we got Karina's album here, Karina's version of the single, and yeah, we got the single one there, which is pretty interesting because I think this one is probably, I think, has a more limited print run compared to the actual Lemonade album. But I like the use of the lemon design on the CD right there. That's very cute. But we also have the sort of like magazine-oriented version as well, which I think is really interesting. Ah, my photo cards. No. But anyway, yeah, so we have the more magazine-oriented one here. It's kind of hard because I have to store the photo cards and stuff inside. But I always pick up the multiple versions of the K-pop albums because so much goes into K-pop branding, you know, and photo shoots and things like that. I almost feel like it's a kind of a disservice to only get one. I'm sure that's how they get you, to be honest. But I'm normally pretty apprehensive about buying like, oh, it's a collector's version of this album or whatever, if there's like no extra content on it, like a deluxe version or something like that. But when like the actual like photo shoots and stuff are different, it's not just like a cover change, right? I think it's definitely worth it. You know, there are like different photo shoots and like concept themes and stuff that you get in one version that isn't in another, so... Jumping off of that, we also have the whole different animal version of aespa's Lemonade. This one's so funny because it's just like so different from the actual like Lemonade versions of the album. And whole different animal, I feel like, is just also very funnily not like the other single, you know, of Lemonade. So the fact that they have this like dark and edgy concept for this version, and then like the bright like 2000s nostalgia for the other versions is very funny to me. And speaking of bright 2000s nostalgia, we have the Karina version of this edition of the Lemonade album as well, and like this is fucking Gen X Soft Club, dude. Like this is just so 2000s, but I like weirdly love it. I have such a sort of nostalgia for the Gen X Soft Club vibe, and I love the bold color scheme and outfits on this version in particular. We also have this version of the album as well, which I think is cool because this little Lemonade caution sticker here is actually a sort of like insert that goes across the album, which is always very fun. You know, K-pop albums, they have the best album packaging of any place that prints physical music. Like, that, bar none, K-pop albums reign supreme when it comes to physical music. But yeah, it's a very, very fun addition of the record. I also ended up picking up Eyelet's album, which will be in the next review session as well. This one's very cute too. This version in particular kind of reminds me of their sort of like Super Real Me era a little bit. That sort of like blue, dreamy style that I think was in a lot of their older work, to be honest. They definitely want to have a bit of a different vibe now. Although with what they've been posting recently on social media, I feel like they might be going back to that sort of like weird sort of esoteric backrooms sort of aesthetic, which I'm very excited about. I really like that style of them. So we have that one. And then we have this one here, which is definitely a bit more traditional for them. Maybe I can do it like that. That'll kind of show you better. And finally, we have this one that feels a bit more like some of their later stuff, I feel like. This definitely feels like some of their middle, warmer, sort of like more standard pop stuff. It's not as interesting as their sort of like backrooms style stuff that they've been posting recently, and also of their Super Real Me era. But I think it's warm, very cool. And again, it's different photo concepts that you can look through as well, so I always appreciate the variety. I also picked up IVE's new album, Revive, as well. This one, luckily for me, in my wallet, didn't have too many different versions, so I was actually able to get all 2 of them. I think there's only 2, hopefully. If there is more, don't tell me, so I won't have to buy them. But this one's pretty cool. I like the sort of like silver sort of, it's not embossed. What's the pushing in one? Whatever. But I like the sort of different texture that we got here. I like the different poses that they have on here. Normally I don't like album covers that have like just all the members on it, but weirdly this one I feel like kind of works. And finally, for my K-pop albums, we have Extraordinary Heroes' Dead And. Hopefully I'm saying the band name right. I've been following them for so long, but I somehow never know how to pronounce their name. This one's really cool, kind of a good showcase of a lot of K-pop packaging where they have like this little oversleeve overlay here, and then it has like their normal image underneath to kind of create like a cool little, not optical illusion, but different effect when you put it on. And that's also the case for this one as well. You have the sort of like silver edgy image of them there and cloaked in shadow, and then you can just cover them up just like that. And now, finally, we get to my vinyl pickups. Now, I don't usually buy a lot of vinyl. Again, I'm much more of a CD guy, so most of my collection is going to be CDs. But there are certain things that they never put out on CD, the things that are vinyl only. So those are typically what I get as vinyl instead of CD. So one of the examples of that is this new sort of like covers and rarities album by Beck here. This one's pretty cool. It has like a lot of, again, rarities and things like that. A bit of a cover album. Normally I'm not super into cover albums, but sometimes, I'll pick it up. Like Rush put out a cover album. I'll pick up this one too. But I think the album cover is pretty fun. And, I just need some more Beck music. He hasn't put out anything in a minute. But apparently he's making a new album pretty soon. So I'm excited about that. I also picked up the Maria's Super Clean Volume 1 and Volume 2. I love the Marias. I've loved them since they first put out Cinema, to be honest. And I think this stuff is also some of their best, if I'm being totally for real. I really liked how their earlier stuff had a bit more of like a Latin flair to it. It still kind of does, definitely. But I feel like their earlier EP stuff especially definitely was on the more like Latin R&B spectrum, which I really enjoyed. So this is a very good project if you are looking to like get into the Marias. And last but not least, I saw Touche Amore this year, and they fucking ruled. And when I saw them, I also had to pick up a few merch items as well. So we got the Palm Dreams single here that was signed. And then we also have the 10th anniversary of Stage 4, which is the tour that I saw them on. And, that show was awesome. They played Stage 4 in its entirety. Stage 4 is one of my favorite albums of all time. So to get something like this that kind of celebrates the entire album, each part of the album has like its own unique sort of like image to it, I think is just super sick. So there's a lot of like love put into this packaging, and I think that's very cool. I was also debating on showing my TV Girl vinyl collection, but I think I got that last year, so I won't do it anyway. I won't do it this time. This video is already way too long. I don't even know how many people are still watching this collection video, but hopefully that was interesting. Hopefully you guys liked seeing what I collect, what I'm into, what I've been listening to, and just like the whole... I just love showing off physical media, I really hope physical media just keeps sticking around, whether it's CDs, vinyl, video games, whatever. I think the art of the packaging is some of the coolest aspects to music in video games and things like that. And maybe it's just my bias coming from a graphic design major, but I think part of the fun of music in video games is looking at the packaging, the artwork, the sort of like CD, the disc, the different like splatter colors on records and things like that. I really think that's part of the whole fun of the entire experience of art in general. So hopefully it sticks around for a long time to come, and hopefully you enjoyed seeing everything that I picked up and have been hoarding. But anyway, that's it for today's video. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe if you liked this. If you want to see more of my collections later down the line, I'll be doing another one for the second half of this year, near December-ish, most likely. So hopefully you like that. Hopefully you stick around and check for more music reviews. I'll be putting out the next round of music reviews very soon. And until the next one, farewell.